I didn't even hear him open it at first. It was just one of those quiet afternoons where the house feels too still, like it's holding its breath. I was in the kitchen, rinsing a glass, when I noticed the silence wasn't normal anymore, it had weight to it. Then I heard the drawer slide shut, not loudly, carefully, like he didn't want me to know. I turned the corner and saw my son standing in the hallway, holding something against his chest. He looked different, not scared exactly, but like something inside him had just shifted into place, something he couldn't unsee. I asked him what he found, trying to sound casual, but my voice didn't cooperate. It came out tight, like I already knew the answer and was just hoping I was wrong. He didn't respond right away, just stared at me in a way he never had before, like he was measuring me against something he'd just learned. And then he said very quietly, "Why didn't you ever tell me about her?" I didn't answer him right away. Not because I didn't hear the question, but because I felt something collapse inside my chest the moment he said it. Her. He didn't say a name, but he didn't need to. The way he said it told me he'd seen enough. I asked him what he meant, buying time more than anything. My hands were still damp from the sink, and I remember wiping them against my shirt like that could somehow steady me. He didn't move. Didn't blink much either. Just held that thing tighter against his chest. Then he turned it slightly, just enough for me to see the edge of it. It was the envelope. Not just any envelope. The one I'd kept buried under old receipts and dead batteries in the bottom drawer of my desk. The one I had convinced myself was invisible after all these years. Yellowed at the corners, soft from being handled too many times in a past I tried to forget. I felt heat crawl up my neck. "You weren't supposed to go in there," I said, and even as the words came out, I hated how weak they sounded. Like that was the problem. Not what was inside. He ignored that completely. "She looks like me," he said. Still quiet. Still steady. "Why does she look like me?" That's when my heart really started pounding, not fast, but heavy. Each beat felt deliberate, like it was reminding me of something I'd buried on purpose. I stepped closer, slowly, like I was approaching something fragile. "Give it to me," I said. He took a step back. That small movement hit harder than anything else. My own son, stepping away from me like I was someone he didn't trust. "I just want to look at it," I added, softer this time. "You've looked at it enough already," he said. "Haven't you?" There was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Not anger. Not yet. It was sharper than that, like disappointment trying to figure out what shape it should take. I swallowed. My throat felt dry, like I hadn't had water in hours. "How much did you see?" I asked. "All of it." The way he said it made my stomach drop. All of it meant the photograph. All of it meant the letter. All of it meant the date. I sat down without meaning to, the chair behind me catching my weight before I even realized I needed it. For a second, the room tilted, not dramatically, just enough to remind me I wasn't in control of this anymore. He finally lowered the envelope and pulled out the photo. I knew exactly which one it was before he even turned it toward me. She was standing in front of that old apartment building, sunlight hitting her face just right. Her hair caught in the wind, half smiling at something outside the frame. And beside her, a little girl. Maybe 5 years old. Dark hair. Same eyes. His eyes. "I thought it was me at first," he said. "But it's not." I nodded slowly, because lying at that point would have been pointless. He was too observant. Always had been. Even as a kid, he noticed things most people missed, small changes, quiet details. I used to think it was something to be proud of. Now it felt like a trap closing in. "Who is she?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because saying it out loud would make it real in a way I couldn't take back. He waited. Not impatiently. Just firmly. It reminded me of someone. Her. There was a time, years ago, when I stood in a doorway just like this, being asked a question I didn't want to answer. Back then, I had chosen silence too. And it had cost me everything. I started, then stopped. My mind flashed back without warning. A different apartment. Smaller. Warmer somehow. The smell of coffee always lingering in the air. Laughter that came easily. A life that felt unfinished, but not broken. I remembered the first time I saw the photo myself, before it was printed, before it became something I'd hide. She had sent it to me late at night, no message attached. Just the image. I stared at it for hours. Not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because I understood it too well. "Dad," my son said, pulling me back. "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Going somewhere else." I blinked, realizing I had been staring past him. "I'm right here," he added. "So just tell me." The room felt smaller now. Or maybe it was just me. I looked at the photo again, then at him. There it was. The resemblance I had spent years pretending wasn't obvious. The same way their eyes narrowed slightly when they focused. The same tilt of the head when they were trying to understand something complicated. I had convinced myself time would blur that connection. It hadn't. "That little girl," I said slowly, "her name is Layla." He repeated it under his breath, like he was testing how it felt. "Layla," then he looked up at me. And I hesitated again. Not because I didn't know what came next, but because once I said it, there was no version of this where things stayed the same. He must have seen that in my face. Because his expression shifted. Not confused anymore. Not even curious. Just bracing. "Is she my sister?" he asked. There it was. No space left to hide. I felt something crack inside me, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet fracture that had been forming for years finally giving in. "Yes," I said. The word barely made it out. For a moment, nothing happened. No reaction. No movement. Just silence. Then he nodded once. Slowly. Like he had already known. "Okay," he said. But the way he said it wasn't acceptance. It was the beginning of something else. Something colder. He looked back down at the letter, still folded inside the envelope. His fingers traced the edge of it like he was deciding whether to open it again. "You wrote this?" he asked. I nodded. "And you never sent it?" Another nod. "Why?" That question landed heavier than the rest. Because the answer wasn't simple. It wasn't one mistake. It was a series of choices. Small ones at first. Easier ones. The kind that feel harmless until they stack up into something you can't fix. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees. "I thought I was protecting everyone," I said. "From what?" I looked at him. "From me." He let out a quiet breath through his nose, like he was trying to make sense of that without reacting too quickly. But I could see it, his jaw tightening, his grip on the envelope shifting just slightly. He didn't believe me. Or maybe he didn't understand how that could possibly be true. "Protecting us, from you," he repeated, slower this time. "That doesn't even make sense." It didn't at the time either, I admitted. It just felt like the least damaging option. "That's what you call this?" he asked, finally looking up again. "Least damaging?" There it was. The first crack of anger breaking through. I nodded, even though it sounded ridiculous now. Saying it out loud stripped away whatever logic I had once wrapped around it. "You don't get to decide that alone," he said. I didn't argue. Because he was right. The thing about secrets like this, they don't feel like explosions when you bury them. They feel like quiet rearrangements. You move one piece of your life slightly out of place, then another, and before you know it, you've built something that looks stable, but only if no one looks too closely. And he had looked. "I need you to tell me everything," he said. Not just pieces. Not just what makes you look better. That stung more than I expected. Not because it was harsh, but because it was accurate. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling for a second, trying to organize thoughts I had spent years avoiding. I met her before you were born, I said. He didn't interrupt this time. Just listened. It wasn't complicated at first. It was simple. Too simple, maybe. We were both younger. Didn't think much about consequences. We just fit in a way that didn't require effort. I could almost hear her laugh again, sharp, unfiltered, the kind that filled a room without asking permission. We weren't planning anything long-term, I continued. No big promises. Just time together. But something changed, he said quietly. I nodded. Yeah. I paused, because this part always came with a weight I couldn't soften. She told me she was pregnant. He blinked once, absorbing that. And you stayed, he asked. For a while. That answer made his expression shift again. Not confusion this time, something closer to disappointment sharpening into shape. What does that mean? It means I tried, I said. At least, I told myself I did. The memory came back clearer now. Late nights, conversations that started calm and ended in silence. The way everything that once felt easy started feeling heavy. She wanted stability, I said. A plan. Something solid. And I stopped, searching for the right word. I wasn't built for that yet. Or maybe I just didn't want to be. So you left. It wasn't a question. Yeah. He looked down at the photo again. His thumb brushed over Layla's face, slow and careful. How old was she when you left? He asked. She hadn't been born yet. That made him freeze. For a second, the anger dropped out of his face completely, replaced by something else. Something quieter. Something that hurt more to look at. You didn't even meet her? He asked. I shook my head. No. The silence that followed was heavier than anything before it. It stretched long enough that I could hear the faint ticking of the clock in the other room. Did Mom know? He asked suddenly. That question hit differently. Yes, I said. When? After we got married. His head snapped up. After? I told her before you were born, I added quickly. I didn't want to start a family with her without being honest. That's your version of honest? He said, his voice rising slightly. Telling her there's another child out there and then just pretending she doesn't exist? I didn't pretend, you hid it, he cut in. You hid it from me. I didn't correct him. Because from his perspective, there was no difference. He stood there for a moment, pacing a step or two like he needed to move or he'd explode. All those years, he said. All those normal days. School, birthdays, dinners, and this was just sitting in a drawer? Yes. Why keep it at all? He asked, turning back to me. If you were so committed to hiding it, why not just throw it away? That question. I had asked myself more times than I could count. I tried once, I said. He frowned slightly, like he didn't expect that. I took the envelope, walked all the way to the trash outside, I continued. Stood there for a long time. Longer than I should have. What stopped you? I hesitated. Guilt, I said finally. And something else. What? I looked at him, really looked this time. Hope. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Hope? For what? That one day I'd find it like this? No, I said quickly. Not like this. Then how? I didn't have a clean answer. Maybe I thought I'd find the right moment, I admitted. A way to explain it that didn't feel like it would break everything. And did you? He asked. I didn't respond. He nodded slowly, answering his own question. Right. He walked over to the desk then, the same one he had opened earlier. ran his fingers along the edge of the drawer like it was something unfamiliar now. "She wrote to you," he said, holding up the letter again. "Layla's mom." "Yes." "And you wrote back?" "Yes." "But you never sent it." "No." "Why write it at all then?" I exhaled slowly. Because not writing it felt worse. He stared at me, trying to understand that logic. "What did she say?" he asked. I hesitated again, but this time, it wasn't about avoiding the truth. It was about knowing exactly what that truth would do. "She told me Layla had started asking questions," I said. "About where I was. Who I was." His expression shifted again. "And you ignored that?" "I didn't ignore it," I said. "I just didn't respond." "That's the same thing," he said. I didn't argue. He unfolded the letter slightly, glancing at the handwriting. "She knew where you lived?" he asked. "No. I had moved by then." "But she still found a way to contact you?" "Yes. And you chose not to answer." I nodded. He shook his head slowly, like he couldn't align the person standing in front of him with the version he was starting to see. "I don't get it," he said. "I really don't." "I know." "No, you don't," he replied. "Because if you did, you wouldn't have done it." That landed harder than anything else he'd said. Because there was no defense against it. He folded the letter back carefully, almost mechanically, and slid it into the envelope again. Then he looked at me, really looked this time. Not like a son looking at his father. Like someone reassessing a stranger. "Does she still think about you?" he asked. I swallowed. "I don't know." "Does Layla?" That question stayed in the air longer than the others. And when I finally answered, my voice came out quieter than before. "I think she probably stopped." He didn't respond to that right away. Just stood there, holding the envelope like it carried more weight than paper should. I watched his face, waiting for anger to come back, or for him to say something sharp again, but it didn't happen. What replaced it was worse. Distance. Not physical distance. He was still standing a few feet away from me. But something in him had stepped back in a way I couldn't reach. "That's sad," he said finally. Not accusing. Not loud. Just flat. I nodded, even though the word didn't even begin to cover it. "Yeah," I said. "It is." He looked down again, then slowly walked past me into the living room. I didn't follow right away. I just sat there, listening to his footsteps, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do next. There's no script for moments like that. No version where you say the right thing and it all softens. Some truths don't open conversations, they end them. After a few seconds, I stood up and followed him. He was by the window, staring outside like he was trying to place himself back into a world that suddenly didn't feel as stable. The afternoon light hit his face the same way it had in that photo, and that thought alone made something twist in my chest. "I should have told you," I said, stopping a few steps behind him. He didn't turn around. "When?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "When should you have told me?" he clarified. 5 years ago? 10? Yesterday? Or were you just never planning to? I opened my mouth, but there wasn't a clean answer. Every option sounded like a failure. "I kept waiting for the right time," I said. He let out a small breath. Not a laugh. Not quite frustration. Something in between. "There is no right time for this," he said. "There's just earlier, or too late." That landed exactly where it should have. Too late. "I know," I said quietly. He finally turned around then. His eyes weren't angry anymore, but they weren't soft either. They were searching, like he was trying to decide how much of me was still real. "Does Mom know you kept this?" he asked. "No." That answer shifted something again. "So she thinks it's over," he said. "All of it." Yes. And it's not. I hesitated. It's not finished, I said carefully. He shook his head. You don't get to call it unfinished like it's some project you paused, he said. You walked away from it. I know. And now I'm part of it, he added. Without ever choosing to be. That was the part one hadn't prepared for. Not just his reaction, but his place in it. Because he was right. This wasn't just my past anymore. It had reached forward, pulled him into something he didn't ask for. What are you going to do? He asked. The question came fast this time. Direct. I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was, I hadn't thought that far. For years, this had been something sealed. Contained. Something I could manage by not touching it. Now it was open. And I didn't know how to hold it anymore. I don't know, I admitted. He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something close to disbelief again. You don't know, he repeated. I haven't let myself think about it, I said. That's the problem, he replied. You haven't let yourself think about any of this. He walked past me again, this time toward the front door. Not rushing. Not dramatic. Just moving with purpose. Where are you going? I asked. He grabbed his jacket from the chair. I need air, he said. Wait, he stopped, but he didn't turn around. What? He asked. There was so much I could have said in that moment. Apologies. Explanations. Promises. But none of them felt solid enough to hold his attention. Just don't leave like this, I said. That was it. That was all I had. He stood there for a second longer. Then he finally looked back at me. And I saw it. Not anger. Not sadness. A kind of quiet decision forming behind his eyes. I didn't leave, he said. You did. The words hit harder than anything else. Because he was right. In every way that mattered. I had been the one who left first. He opened the door. Does she live far? He asked suddenly. The question caught me completely off guard. Who? Layla, he said. Where is she? I felt my chest tighten. I'm not sure exactly, I admitted. Same city, I think. Or nearby. He nodded slowly, like he was storing that information. And you never checked? He asked. No. Another nod. Then he looked at the envelope in his hand. I might, he said. That word, might, carried more weight than anything else he'd said all day. You don't have to do that, I said quickly. He tilted his head slightly. Don't I? He asked. I didn't have an answer. Because what right did I have to tell him what to do now? He stepped outside. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Not loud. Not dramatic. But final in a way that settled into the walls of the house. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door like it might open again if I waited long enough. It didn't. The house felt different now. Not just quiet, but hollow in a way I hadn't noticed before. Like something essential had shifted out of place. I walked back to the desk slowly, almost automatically. The drawer was still open. Inside, everything looked the same. Pens. Old receipts. Useless things I had convinced myself were worth keeping. Except now, the one thing I had actually been protecting was gone. And somehow, that didn't feel like relief. It felt like exposure. Like everything I had kept contained for years was now moving freely, outside my control. I sat down again, staring at the empty space where the envelope used to be. And for the first time in a long time, I thought about her without trying to push it away. Not just the past, but the present. Where she might be. What she might think. Whether she had stopped asking questions, or just stopped expecting answers. And then something else crept in. A realization I couldn't ignore anymore. My son wasn't just hurt. He was deciding. Deciding who I was to him now. And that wasn't something I could fix with time, or words, or anything. Because trust doesn't break loudly. It shifts quietly, until one day, it's just not there anymore. And standing in that room, with the drawer still open and the silence pressing in, I knew I had just watched it disappear.